Today we're in the somewhat remote little town of Uyuni, which is not very attractive as a place to visit, but we haven't come here for the town itself. We've come here for the amazing Uyuni salt flats. So we drive on the highway for about half an hour outside of town. There you can see the edge of the salt flats. We're at an elevation of approximately 13,000 feet. And now the four-wheel drive is starting to move towards the salt flats. As you can see, the terrain is changing. We've gone from sand to a mix of sand and salt, and now more salt with some very crude vegetation. And now we're actually heading for the salt flat itself. This road is made of salt. So again, the terrain is changing. More and more salt is showing up. And we're getting to the actual salt flats themselves. It's the largest salt flat on planet Earth. And it's the result of the fact that Lake Titicaca used to be 10 times the size it is now, and all the salt shifted down to the southern end because the Altiplano tilted from the north to the south thousands of years ago. And here we see some little pools, bubbling cold salt water, actually almost freezingly cold salt water. And again, you can see the bubbling action. Okay, now we're actually on the salt flats itself. The darkness of the surface underneath the vehicle is the result of so many cars traveling across it. And here's some strange guy in the middle of nowhere. As I said, the salt flat is the largest in the world and was created because Lake Titicaca was once part of the Pacific Ocean, was raised up to an altitude of 13,000 feet. Then the Altiplano tilted, and the result was that all of the salt water headed south, and eventually the water evaporated, resulting in this deposit of crystal salt, which is about, as far as I can tell, something like at least 10 meters deep, which is over 30 feet. This shows you the remoteness of the location. Mountains in the background, and also the fascinating hexagonal shape of the encrusted salt. In some cases you can see beyond the horizon, or at least at the horizon, the extent of this huge salt flat. So after walking around on the surface, it's time to get back in and start moving. So the mountains that you see are volcanoes. So this shows you an absolutely fascinating landscape of volcanic activity, plate tectonics, the Altiplano tilting, massive amounts of water shifting and then evaporating. This is one of a two-part video I'm making, so stay tuned to part 2 in another video. And now we're approaching an island, a volcanic island called Incahuasi, which means the house of the Inca. As we get out of the car, you see structures that were made over the course of the last 30 years by one Bolivian individual. This is his home, and now also has a museum and thousands upon thousands of cactus. You see the multiple buildings? And now, after checking out the sign and description, we make our assault and ascent. It's a mildly tortuous climb, but not too difficult. It's about a 25-minute walk up on top of parts of the island, giving amazing views eventually of the salt flats and past thousands upon thousands of cactus. It's amazing that anything could live in this area because Usually there are only 3 to 4 months of rainfall, but some spectacular views are allowed from different elevations. And as we continue walking, once again, of course, you see many different cactus, at least 2 or 3 species of them. But the main thing is the vastness of the salt flats of Uyuni. It will be part of upcoming Hidden Inca tours, probably in 2018 or possibly 2019, as extensions of major tours. Though it is remote, this area is only a 1-hour flight from La Paz, Bolivia, and La Paz is only a 1-hour flight from our central location of Cusco. Our journey begins close to the Uyuni salt flats, and we're heading towards ancient cemeteries that we've heard are located in the foreground. As you can see, the vegetation here is very primitive and very dry area. So we go inside this first cave, and you can see there are some interesting artifacts inside of it, but no actual human remains. But then we're guided towards what looks like a house, and is in fact a ceremonial cemetery structure made out of ancient coral. So this was part of an inland sea, and prior to that, it was part of the Pacific Ocean that got uplifted. And here are ancient human remains. Though generally referred to as the Aymara culture, which actually is represented by the population of the area to this very day, it's more likely that these remains are of the Uruchipaya people, dating back at least 1,000 years. And here is a preserved puma. So as we leave this cemetery, and again you see these amazing coral formations, we're about to head back out onto the flat areas and head towards the actual Uyuni salt flats. Uyuni being an Aymara word meaning pen of some kind. Not pen as in writing pen, but pen as in a penned-in area. That may be a mistranslation. So here we are on the largest salt flats on the planet, and our destination is right ahead of us. You see the hexagonal shapes in the salt surface, and this is an area where they're actually processing the salt. They build walls and even houses out of this salt material. The Uyuni salt flats are also where we find at least 50% of the world's lithium deposit, and the Bolivian government is beginning to exploit this in order to make batteries in the future. The Chinese wanted to do the actual work here, but the Bolivian government said, thanks very much, I think we can do this ourselves. You are now getting your first glimpse at Cerro Tanupa, or Volcan Tanupa, which in the Aymara language means the mountain of the creator, or the mountain of creation. It's a huge volcano rising above the salt flats at Uyuni, and it's here that we're going to explore another cave that supposedly has interesting human remains of antiquity and possibly elongated skulls. So here we are on a very rough dirt road in a four-wheel drive, heading up along or onto the flank of Cerro Tanupa. And these walls date back at least to Inca times, if not older. And now you see the great Uyuni salt flat in the background. So the sign is pointing to Chulpas Momias, which means ceremonial towers and or caves containing mummies, at least 1,000 years old, possibly of the Aymara culture or Aymara ancestors, or maybe the Uruchipaya people. So as we walk along this ancient path, again in the background, you can see that there are walls, again going back at least to the time of the Inca, or quite possibly even older, 1,000 or 2,000 years old, of the Aymara or Uruchipaya people. And this is the entrance to the tomb. You have to bend over in order to be able to get inside here. And that is the caretaker there. And of course there is Irene. And then this is our first mummy. With black hair. It's a complete skeleton. Has a somewhat elongated skull, as you can see. Nothing in comparison to the ancient Paracas people of the coast of Peru, but still an example of cranial deformation dating back at least 1,000, if not 2,000 years. This gate or this cave has to be locked at night because people for decades have been stealing these skeletons and probably selling them on the black market to people outside of the country. Again, here you can see that it is in fact an elongated skull with black hair. And here we have another complete mummy. And as we look back at Cerro Tanupa, and then forward to the salt flats, it's time to leave and continue this adventure. We're now at another village, located a few miles away from the cave we were just at. So we're entering through this quite modern enclosure, and we've been told that there is a mummy or two inside of a small cave in this immediate area. The man that runs this operation is an old Aymara man who has been collecting different stones that appear to be looking like different animals and birds, what are called simulacras. They're not carvings themselves, they are simply natural formations. And this is our first glimpse inside of the little cave. There you see a full mummy in the background, a somewhat elongated skull to the right or left side, and then here is another mummy with cranial deformation located in the other corner. And this gives you a better view of the skeleton and the elongated skull. So that's more or less it for today. Again, we're walking back through this rock garden of natural shapes of stone that appear to look like different animals. And a copy of one of the figures in stone found at Tiwanaku in Bolivia. And now heading back to the hotel on the long expanse of the Uyuni salt flats, the largest salt flats in the world. Again, you can see the hexagonal design in the surface of this natural formation. And this salt flat was created when Lake Titicaca, which used to be seawater, was 10 times the size that it is now.